In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to use a mesh network to animate a neural impulse. Now, this is not based on my own tutorial. This is actually taken from somebody else's tutorial here. So Emily Holden has a great tutorial on neural networks using mesh motion graphics, and this is really great, and I've used this, but I've made a couple of changes to it I thought might be useful to some of you. So I'm just going to go through the process of setting it up, and I'll link to this tutorial, but thanks to her for first designing this idea. So what we have here, just have a simple model of a neuron. I'm just going to hide this temporarily. So using a mesh network, just simple spheres, using the curve node. So the two things that are different about the approach that I'm taking here compared to what Emily showed in her tutorial was that I'm just doing a couple of things that maybe make it a little bit more efficient. First of all, you can use more than one curve in a Maya curve node. You can actually have multiple curves, and I'll show you how to do that. And also in the previous tutorial, she bakes out the animation where she takes the animation of the mesh objects and bakes them. So sets a keyframe for each of their positions in order to turn them into mesh lights. But in fact, you don't have to do that. You can just leave it as a mesh repro mesh and get the same effect. So I'm going to set this up. I'll just hide this object. So the original mesh, and I'll rebuild it. So we'll just start with a sphere, and I'm going to make a mesh network from this. And I'm going to use a mesh geometry type rather than an instancer. And the reason for this is that we want to turn this object into a mesh light, and that won't work with an instancer. It would only work with a mesh. So just creating the default is a linear distribution. So if we look at the mesh network here, the distribution is linear, and we have a repro mesh. So we have to add a curve node to the mesh, and then add the curves that we're going to use. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 curves. I've got a fifth curve here. I'm not going to use this because it branches off. I might have to create a separate mesh network for this. I could include it, but in terms of timing it, we might want to use a separate mesh network. So to go into the curve node, we'll just middle mouse drag the curves we do want to use into the input curve section here. And now you'll see that the mesh objects have moved, but they don't seem to be lining up quite properly with the curves. And the reason for that is simple. We still have a linear distribution with a distance in x of 20. So if we reduce that to 0, then they'll all go to their curves. So really it doesn't matter what the distribution type is here. We could set this to initial state too, and that would work, or just leave it at linear, just as long as there are no settings, attributes that will offset it from its original position. And as always, I didn't mention this, but the original sphere that we made, remember to have it zeroed out in the middle of the world with its transformations frozen. Otherwise, that can also cause that offset problem. Let's delete this too. So now if we just play the animation, we have something like this, and you can see they're moving in a certain direction along the curves. Now the direction they'll move along the curve is determined by the direction of the curve itself. So if I look in this curve that's going up the axon and go into the control vertices, you can see the first control vertex is an unfilled square. The next one is a U, and that's always the indication of the beginning of a curve in Maya. The end of the curve just ends with a normal control vertex. So these ones, I have these reversed. So they start out here and they move in towards the center. So that's the reason for that. Now if we go into the curve node, we can take a look at a few things here. So the step amount, if we just get it a bit closer, is going to determine how these things are spread out from each other. animation speed is what you imagine it is. The higher this number, the faster the animation. Time step variation will just randomize that step amount. Set that back to 0. Velocity random, velocity noise. These things are pretty obvious. Now, one thing that is not that obvious is how you get these to be distributed properly between the curves, because there's no direct control over that. So if we go back to the distribute node, the number of points here is set to 10. If we set that to 4, that's the number of curves we have, then we'll get 4 mesh objects, but you can see 1 here, and 2 on this curve, and this curve has none, sadly. So the way to correct that is to go into the curve node and, the mesh curve node. And here, beside proportional counts, we can turn on equal spacing, and then it will distribute them evenly between the curves. Now you can turn off proportional counts now and it won't really matter, but if it's turned off in the beginning, you don't have access to equal spacing. So curve length affects speeds here could be important. So if you've got a short curve and a long curve, it'll take the same amount of time for a mesh object to get to the beginning, from the beginning to the end of each one. So the one on the long curve obviously will move much faster, and so on. So you can play around with this. I'm going to increase my distribution, so I've got a few of these together, because these will be casting my light. So the number of objects or number of points that you have, and how they're stepped out from each other. So if I've got 12, we'll have 3 on each, will determine sort of the width of the signal in your render. Okay, so really that's all there is to it. In the previous tutorial that I mentioned, at this stage, the recommendation was to select these objects and bake out their animation, but you can actually just leave them as a repro mesh here, because the repro mesh is actually an object that is separate from the mesh network but connected to it. So by not baking it out, we can still modify the mesh network and see changes to the procedural animation. But we can now select the Mesh 2 repro mesh and go under Arnold, Lights, and turn on Mesh Light. And so it turns these small spheres into lights. It's all the same settings as a normal Arnold light, so I can turn up their exposure to 8. Just turn on my Neuron again, and we can take a look. I think I have to turn off depth of field in this camera. And turn down my settings a little bit, wherever those settings are. Okay. All right, well, that's not showing up, but we can open the Arnold render view, do a quick render. Right, so you can see that the glow is coming from those lights inside. So if I select the mesh light here, so that's under the repro mesh now, it's a child of the repro mesh. If I turn this value up to something higher like 12, now you can see that they'll appear to be brighter. And if I advance the animation a bit, we should be able to see. Okay, here's a good spot. So we can see how they are lighting up the object. And really that's all there is to it. So we can still tweak the animation speed and all that kind of stuff. Now the last thing I'll say is that because they're inside the object, your shader has to be something that has some level of transmission. And then you can also combine it with subsurface scattering. But transmission alone, subsurface scattering alone won't let these lights shine through the surface. So if I turn the weight of transmission down to 0, Now you can see none of the light is shining through. So subsurface scattering won't do it. It's because they're shining on the inside of the model, and so subsurface scattering won't be calculated in that way. If we turn up transmission, of course, then the light can escape, and then subsurface scattering can let it spread out on the surface as well. In the other tutorial by Emily Holden, she also mentioned that you could turn on thin-walled, also to let the light out, so it treats it like a double-walled, like a thin-walled, like the name says, a thin-walled object. But that will also let the light through. This looks pretty good. Some of these things working together might give you interesting results, but also might take a long time to render. But you have to let the light out somehow. Anyway, so that's all there is to it. We're taking an already really good tutorial, very useful, and just adapting it to use more than one curve in the same mesh network, and then also use the repro mesh directly as an Arnold mesh light rather than baking it out. So big thanks to Emily Holden for her tutorial, and I hope you all find this useful. Thanks.